Hello, and welcome to the UX Usability Podcast. I'm Dr. Chris Parker, and tonight we are sitting down to talk with Marg Laing. Marg is a user experience researcher with over 15 years experience in industry. She has worked with some of the biggest companies, including Nike, Barclays, Channel 4, HSBC, and Honda. The list goes on and on. We're going to talk about usability testing, working with users, and virtual reality that will take us into the future. It is absolutely eye-opening seeing her perspective on what makes good design practice and how we as user experience designers can make ourselves better. So sit back and enjoy the insights. So Marg, your LinkedIn profile says you're a UX researcher, UX design consultant with 15 plus years experience. You deliver user-centered research and design for services and interactive experiences, and your experience in remote user research and agile product teams. That's quite an impressive background.
Thanks.
You also say that you like making a positive impact on people's life. So for you, what does making a positive impact on people's lives mean?
Good question. I like improving people's experience when they are using something. Positive impact might be to save them time. It might be to be pleasurable. It depends entirely what you're making. Or it could be something that was positive because it was actually a tool that was going to help their health. But ultimately, for good, tools that are for good, I guess. I guess the very mundane thing would be, removing irritation. Unnecessary irritation is the most simple thing you could do, and getting people to what they're looking for. People don't long to spend all their time clicking on your product or interacting with your app. Their goal is to achieve something, to get to something. So to enable them to do that and enjoy the experience while they're at it is, I guess, the goal.
Yeah. So do you feel that when people are doing the designs, they focus too much on the big picture and ignore those small, house duty issues of removing irritability, or is it that big picture they all focus on?
Well, you kind of focus on different bits at different times in the process. You sort of start with the big picture goal of what you're trying to achieve, and then you narrow down into. It's easy to get caught up on the little detail and forget what the big picture is actually. So you could spend ages, I could spend ages sitting with a designer debating the place of a button or the text on the button, because that's really, really important, and kind of lose track of, what we're trying to do overall as well. You can happen both ways. You can focus on the wrong thing, spend too much time on one or the other.
Okay. So how did you get started in design?
My background was English literature and fine art. I studied painting and English literature. And so, nothing digital at all. I moved to the UK in 1997. And I started working as an editorial assistant on a journal and weekly news sheet, and I thought that my future was in copy and editorial, and but over time I ended up in a digital advertising agency called DNA in 2000, and my job was called content manager. And what that meant, this was a time when websites were being built, hard coded, like HTML build, and the first project I did was building the DCMS, Department for Culture, Ministry and Sport, their website. And it was just this huge, huge content site. And the job was to receive lots and lots of content and then structure it so that people could get to it, essentially doing the information architecture and then cutting down the copy so that it wouldn't be overwhelming, because there was far more content than one would sanely ever want to engage with on a website. So that would be, the days of writing for the web and cut down a third of your text and put in subheadings and break it up and that kind of stuff. I was doing sitemaps and a bit of, copy headlines, and we would try to do banner copy. I realized I wasn't really a copywriter or an ad writer. I was more interested in how information was communicated through the medium of the screen. So I started doing wireframes and PowerPoint, and eventually Visio came about, which was this revelation where we could make wireframes. And I worked a lot on, with the designer, trying to figure out how the structuring of the information could then would be communicated in design. It was always a to and fro process of them saying there's too much copy, and there was too much copy, and so it went like that. And then, of course, usability became a thing, and user testing became a thing. But initially, we just used to do it ourselves, and that was how it went. And then, the idea of being able to access real users and test with them was really exciting. It was incredibly difficult to get companies to agree to pay money for this art, which they didn't see any value in. They were much happier just things being built and delivered and going live and never changing. Especially when at the time building CMS websites was, so CMS came along, and then building sites in CMS was an incredibly expensive operation. So it was the golden day for these digital agencies. They made an absolute fortune, and it wasn't easy to change these things once the templates were built. So it was really quite foolhardy for them to not buy into user testing. But bit by bit in my career, I started to get practice in that and get to meet users. I worked with Channel 4 on a really great, it was the first agile methodology project I worked on, where we redesigned the homepage and the program pages. We were a team of UX designers working in-house. And that was really great, but we didn't get to do the testing ourselves. We had a company, an external company do it, which was quite common back then. So anyway, I've lost the plot now. That was how I got into it. I guess how I really got into it was my partner at the time was teaching courses in different kinds of software, and I went and did a free course in HTML, and I did a Flash course, and I thought, oh, this is interesting. And then I got put forward for a job in the digital agency and taken.
It's really interesting how you say that, because it's a story you hear a lot from people that they didn't start out thinking, oh, I want to be a UX designer. It's always, I was the arty kid and I thought I was going to be an artist. I ended up doing English at university, and now I'm designing websites. Do you think there's something in that about, the creative mindset finding its way to UX rather than a path that you necessarily choose?
I think what interests me is the communication, like how communication happens. So how people, so how I'll interpret a brief from a client and try to understand what they're trying to achieve, and then what that might mean for someone else. And then this layer of what I make up in a structure, and then how does that work in the limitation of the interface, of the screen, and what the designer then brings to it. And I love the transformation of what that means when you bring a creative layer and a brand on it, and then you have a copywriter, how that comes to life, and then how it actually communicates with the end user is fascinating. It just fascinates me that, when you think you're so sure about something and it totally fails. Your chief target, you're just like, how could that not work for you? Or vice versa, someone could just ease their way through a process and you effortlessly. It's interesting watching how different people engage with things you create.
Yeah, I remember sitting through watching Usability session. And my design's there in the hands of people, and I'm thinking, I've aced this. This is something that is going to completely change everything.
Yeah.
And they're baffled by it. And how? And I remember thinking, yeah, what's going on in their minds is
Hmm.
so alien to me. I just can't intuitively know it. It's something I had to kind of feel out, and over time learned that it's less about me knowing things and more about feeling the way. So
Yeah.
in your experience, you've come a long way in your journey from those CSS websites. When you've been working on your projects, I see you worked from Nike through to Royal Mail and HSBC. Which projects do you find the most fulfilling?
The projects I find the most fulfilling are the ones where I'm able to fully engage with um, the objective and who the person is and what their objective is, and discover things that that I didn't know, so that a better solution can be found. I find it very satisfying to solve problems. So I guess that's what really interests me when we discover something new. And I used to really love the challenge of designing new widgets, I guess. So, but everything now is kind of templated, and their design systems, and everyone knows what a gallery is, and they're out the box. All these things are out the box, but in the early days they weren't, and it wasn't even possible sometimes to do them. But we used to make up what we wanted to be possible, and that was really exciting, because we would go, well, someone would like to look at 10 photos at the bottom of the and they'd like to cycle through them, and like, how should we do that? Should we have arrows on either side, or should we, like, how can we make that, and how could we make it interesting? So that was really fascinated me, the having the space to create new things that hadn't been done, for the interface, for the technology. That was really very satisfying. From a user research perspective, I really love proving assumptions wrong through research and learning more about something. So, I did some field research in Scotland with a shipping company, and they had decided they would replace laptops with tablets. And I managed to do some research in the field, out with people, watching what they did and talking to them, and then testing out. We had some software that they used, so watching them use the software, and then watching what they did in the space in their day, and just watch. And I just sort of saw how they were using their phone in between their meetings. And it sort of became, and also what they did during the day was very kind of in warehouses, and it didn't really suit carrying a big tablet. So I found it very satisfying to report that back and say, carrying around a tablet isn't the right thing, but actually everyone has a phone in their hand. So we could create some software for them to do their task on a phone instead. It's exciting to solve, like, things that you never imagined were there, I guess.
So what skills do you think someone needs to be really great at that kind of user research?
Well, for user research, I think you need to be curious and observant. You have to be orderly in your mind. So there's a sort of somewhat scientific in your approach, not totally scientific, but you need to be thorough, because it's easy to let your own emotions or desires get in the way of your findings. So you need to be able to step away from what you want and really be neutral. I suppose that for user research is good, and just a curiosity and interest in people and care for what they think and say, and ability to listen, which is very difficult, actually, because we are so busy to hear what we want to hear that it's sometimes really hard to just listen and absorb before speaking. I think it's a constant battle to do that. For UX design, one needs to be able to think through, imagine, don't know how to explain it. Imagine processes and in a kind of mentally spatial way. I guess that doesn't really mean anything, but that's how I think about it.
Do you try and imagine how people could be using future products or services, or do you try and empathize with the way they're feeling in the here and now?
I try to understand what they are doing now and as well as what they're saying, because what they say is you need to observe what they do, not just hear what they say, and apply what they do into what you're doing. So there's, as opposed to what they'll do in the future, who knows? Mm-hmm. That's not my gamble. I don't know what they'll do in the future.
Mm. I think what you said about being able to listen as a critical skill is really interesting, because so often I've seen like my students at Loughborough University go off and do interviews or do observations and work, and they come back very upset because the user didn't like their product. And they kind of go, well, how should I do it better so they do like it? It's like, well, no, this is the right answer. Unfortunately, it's not the one you wanted. But why did they not like it? How can you improve? But they were so fixated on the negative happening in the session that they didn't listen for those little golden nuggets of what would make it good.
Yes, or yeah, quite. Because if you're testing your own creation, it's difficult to be neutral about it, especially if you feel really proud about what you've done. And I've been there. I have been in that space of, like just wanting the usability testing to give me a positive outcome for something like the project that I was on, and you're like willing it. You can construct tests that actually enable your design to not fail. To truly test your design, you've got to be wanting to find fail, because there has to be a fail in it. Rather fail fast. But I think that historically, we don't have a culture of that. So of fail and learn, definitely not in the old days. It was all about like everything you did just had to be, you had to win the pitch and had to be perfect and get it signed off and get your creation live and then, move on. But now, there is more interest in getting the right thing, finding the assumptions. But it's difficult in a product team where there is leadership that is absolutely obsessed with their idea. So it's not about testing an interface when you're trying to understand what you're actually testing is like, what do people need and want when you're developing product? That's what it is. It's not like, oh, let's design a feature. It's more like, who are these people and what are their real problems and what are they trying to solve? And then regardless of what we've made, where is the insight? And then how do they respond to what we're thinking of making? And it can be quite political to report back that the product idea that everyone's hell-bent on is not really what their target audience is interested in.
So when you start with a new design project, you get given your brief, as mentioned earlier, and they're all different. Some are more advanced, some are quite open. But if you're given a relatively blank canvas of rediscovering what the customer wants or what's the unmet need, how would you go about discovering this?
Yeah, well, ideally, I guess your starting point when you've got a product is to understand how it's being used right now. So you can look at the product and see what is being used and what isn't. You can look at feedback you've received, what do people complain about? Try and look at everything you can about what they're telling you without you even talking to them for a starting point. Because you can get a lot of clues from help desk inquiries where people are telling you what they need or what's irritating them. So having gone through some of that, there you can find things that you might want to take forward, or questions to take forward to. So you could start with some assumptions at least, that might point to areas that you might want to investigate. It's good to do open-ended generative interviews where you can speak and hear what the customer, and understand more what they are doing and what they're trying to achieve in their job, in their life, and get a sense of, and not assume that they want things from you at all. Trying to understand the other things that they use or find useful. Mm-hmm. It's also really great to talk to people who have left you, have abandoned your product. That's also a really fruitful source. And people who are really not very engaged at all. That's a great way to find out like what is missing, if they're willing to speak to you. Yeah,
that's really interesting insight, because I was talking to a professor the other day actually about buses, and the problem with bus research is all the bus companies and train companies speak to their existing customers, and they get really good at listening to people who take the bus.
Yes, but
they never listen to people who don't take the bus and refuse to. Yeah. And you kind of think, you know what, if you just speak to those people more, maybe we'd actually improve the whole experience in some incredible way we can't imagine right now.
Yeah. So I guess, obviously the other thing is your competitor analysis and understanding who you're really competing with. So I find companies a lot, they kind of only look at they only see their competitors as people who are offering kind of the exact same thing as them. But yeah, as you say, with the bus as an example, you might be competing with someone's walking, for example, or, something that is completely different. And if you can understand what's good about that experience or why that's a preferable experience, then it might generate ideas for how your experience could be better. I don't know if you saw those city, I don't know in London a few years ago, we had some city mapper buses. Do you know City Mapper?
I didn't see this, unfortunately.
You know the app, the City Mapper app?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So that app it's just amazing, because they could see where there were gaps in the transport network, and they could see how many people were using different methods of transport. I mean, so they had the data to support that. And then they created some sort of test bus routes that would join up the dots. And they also created, it was pretty cool. They created their special bus, which had phone charger ports in between the seats.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I
simple things in life.
Yeah. So you could get on the bus and charge your phone, and it was taking you on a route that you wouldn't have otherwise been able to connect together. I ended up on one by chance, and I was like, oh, I don't know why it didn't take off, or maybe it was just a trial. It was really brilliant concept.
So do you think that the whole field of design needs more wacky experiments like that to improve itself, or is there something else missing that would make the whole field better?
I think design is always experimenting. I don't, you may not see it, but people are always innovating and experimenting and trying new things. I guess it's in waves, something new gets caught up with, and it takes a few years for a really good idea, like, I don't know, style guides or, to trend, and then everyone bit by bit starts creating them or reusing them or whatever. But there's always someone making up something new. I think creative people are always doing that. They're innovating in another way. It'll be not the form factor. They'll be making innovative content. So finding a way to bring, I don't know, moving image content, for example. There's always something to enhance or explore an experience like augmented reality, virtual reality. That's That's where the innovation is.
Mm. See, AR and VR, it's always felt like it's about to take over.
It is.
And when Apple released it's an AR kit for iPhone, I was really excited, thinking, right, this is the time we're going to see an explosion of AR in our life. And it's not yet happened. Why do you think that is?
Why hasn't it happened? I think it's happening. It's happening now. It really is, with the Oculus Quest launching. It isn't as massive maybe as you think, because there's the limitation of headsets that are comfortable. So I guess there's that piece of equipment has to be affordable. The technology has to become sufficiently affordable and comfortable for the mass to take it up. And the usefulness of people don't just go and sit on websites for nothing. They go there for a reason. So you need a reason. But, Facebook is developing, it's bought the Oculus Quest. And it's just a matter of time before everyone on Facebook is chatting to each other with their VR headset and playing games with each other and interacting with each other. It happens already with gamers, but I think some really cool, interesting stuff will happen with, pervasive computing, computing tools, and I think it's gonna happen very quickly.
Well, this is the one areas that I'm researching at the moment of, how should you design a VR environment that people are going to really love? And you look at what's out there at the moment, and lots of it is really driven by computer games, you said. Did you see the Macy's AR, VR? Is it
No.
Macy's VR shop from about 2017? You walk around a virtual shop and you can kind of point to a handbag and it pops up. You can spin it around and you can see all these prices. And in the end, they abandoned it because there was just not enough demand for it. But every time I see the next new thing, it almost looks like they took a concept such as shopping and thought, how can I make this like a computer game?
Yeah.
And it's a bit uncertain. Is that the right direction to go in? Or should we be thinking about a whole new kind of experience that doesn't map to anything that we know?
It's all about what's your purpose, isn't it? Like, if maybe shopping in VR isn't the thing, because, if you're shopping for something physical and you want to pick it up, in VR, you're getting an approximation, but it's not real. So it could be a bit disappointing, maybe. So maybe it's a little faster to just use a website, because your 2D image of the bag with a little rotation is maybe better. But perhaps we're just not there. We're just not quite there yet. But maybe people will really enjoy a branded interaction where they enter a space and they hear the music and they have. I mean, I know whatever Gucci. I mean, this isn't. I'm not a shopper, so this is like the farthest thing that I can imagine liking. But I can imagine like youngsters really enjoying interacting with people in branded shopping environments. And I'm just thinking of Boocom and the massive flop of online shopping, because people just weren't quite ready for it. And actually, one of the It's always the blocker is something that maybe isn't even people were scared to pay. There was a huge fear of putting in your credit card details online. I remember we used to cut out images of security, of little padlocks, and put it under, say this is secure.
So for anyone listening who's under 25, I guess, Boocom. That was the first version of online fashion retail. Yeah. And it went belly under in about 2002, I believe, .com bubble bursting.
Yeah.
It was quite amazing, because look at the old screen grabs. It looks, by modern standards, looks hideous. Like, how would you shop with this? But that was it 1998 or so, was incredible.
It was cutting edge, man. It was too cutting edge. People were just like, oh no, I couldn't possibly do this.
So maybe we're at that stage now where what we see as VR now, the cutting edge, we're going to look back in 25 years' time thinking, oh, God, what were we thinking?
And yes, of course I'm going to put on my headset and go into the shop and choose what I want to buy. Of course, that's what I'm going to do. Why would I sit and look at it in my tiny little laptop screen when in VR, I can stand and just by turning my body, I can see 500 things instead of 3 things. You know, it's the expanded platform. You know, you've got I'm very excited for when we can do workshops in VR, because I'm sitting here in Miro and I've got my laptop screen and I'm going crazy because I'm trying to work in Miro and have a website open, and I need another monitor. But imagine I could just put on my headset, you'd have yours on, and we'd be standing next to each other with this amazing big wall and just be like moving things around. It'd be awesome.
At some point, we look at Miro and all these online tools. They're fantastic. Like 10 years ago, we couldn't do this. We could hardly do this conversation of the podcast this way 10 years ago. But, oh, God, I just kind of look at the boards going, I wish we had a cup of coffee and we just had some post-notes. We're just doing this in person rather than over the internet. I always feel disappointed when I get the new VR apps I remember The Matrix, and they have these cool scenes where they go into the Matrix and they can just have everything in front of them in every direction. And that's kind of what I want. And then I put the headset on and go, oh, it's, I guess it's 3D. It's like, why are we being bound to the laws of reality in a platform that can completely break reality, but doesn't?
But I think some of it does. I mean, I think that, I think there's a huge raft of stuff out there. I can't say I've only gone into a little bit. I think that there's huge steps to be taken in breaking out of I looked at the browser and found that very disappointing. Just trying to scroll through, effectively YouTube results or whatever. And that was kind of, oh no, it's just been mimicked out of what you would see on a laptop. But I mean, it's early days. I think it's just a matter of time before people, it's just time. And the more talent that starts working on it, and it's going to be fascinating. And of course, you need strong processing capability to make really amazing visual experiences. All these things are lined up if you're trying to make incredibly rich graphical experience that are totally responsive to your movement and head turning all the time. Not everyone can actually process stuff like that. So, but the tech will catch up.
Yeah, I could never speak to that. I managed to completely crash Oculus in my lab setup just by going, right, what can I do with Unity that can really push this? That was a fun afternoon. But you can see a day when we move beyond the fun things, like say Facebook. Okay, Facebook say, it's fun. And it's searching the web at some level it's fun. Do you think we could use banking in VR?
Well, I mean, you can do anything in VR. Anything you can do on your laptop, obviously you could do it in VR. But I mean, the question is it preferable, or is there something better, or, that's all.
Going to have a researcher on in a few weeks' time called Liang Su. And she's been doing research she started in VR, AR for fashion retail. And she dropped the VR research really quickly because she found that people didn't want it. They wanted the augmented reality experience, like magic mirrors and, using your phone as a portal. But there was something about the VR bit that people weren't quite ready for. So maybe there's a cultural part we got to grow into. But
it's in the context of fashion, right? So it's about what are they trying to achieve? They're thinking about clothes for their own body. They're thinking about color and the texture, and so they're thinking maybe about something photorealistic, and maybe it's just faster and easier to do it I mean, I don't know what circumstance they're in, but maybe they want to walk in a shop and see an augmented layer of what they want. What could potentially happen in VR with fashion-related stuff is, will be determined, I'm sure. I guess if you, the simplest, well, not the simplest, but the most complex is your haptic feedback for like texture. How can you, if you walk into a clothes shop, you can't. I mean, I know people shop online anyway and don't touch anything.
They started that a few years ago. It was called, is it Strugel or Scrugel?
Yeah.
It's a very weird name like that. And you could pinch fabric on your phone. So imagine you got a bit of denim there and you try and scrunch it with your fingers. And the image would warp and scrunch up in the way it would naturally. It was a really weird experience because you saw it respond, but you didn't feel it.
Yeah, that is weird. That's the amazing thing about handsets where you get the vibration. It's so convincing your brain to get tricked by it all. It just absolutely baffles me. I think it's a wonderment that is possible. I think it's endlessly fascinating what could be done. But the thing is, right? I don't know if you've seen footage of when people have body scans, and then in their VR experience they have like a 3D version of themselves. Now, if you can imagine having if you just got body scanned and then went into your fashion store, you could see yourself with the clothes on.
Would we want to?
Well, you might not want to, but it'd be hell of a useful. You don't have to try it on. You can see it's very, very quick. You could put a pair of trousers on 3 times, 3 different pairs of trousers on, and choose which one you think suited you better, because you've got you can walk around yourself and look at yourself.
I know what I'd find amazing is I walk into whatever shop, let's say Paul Smith and Thing Flash, and I pick out a suit, try it on me, and they can say, well, this is how you'll look with the options you chose. Yeah. Now, with our stylist suggestions, this is how you could look. And you can see you can actually see how the tailoring and maybe different fabric drape can make you look better in whatever way. That'd be a really interesting thing. The future's definitely going to be a really wild place to be compared to where we are now.
Yeah, I mean, I don't like going shopping, so I guess but I won't buy clothes online because I know that I don't trust that they'll fit me. So maybe that's it. And imagine, right, if you had a tailor, and so you wanted something made, you could meet your tailor in VR, and they could, like, you could talk, they could, I just think you could have some incredible interactions with people that you wouldn't be able to otherwise. It'd be really fascinating. Yeah. Anyway, I'm going to go off into dreams about this.
No, please do. That's the best part when people can start having strange ideas about the future, and then someone goes and makes it happen.
Yeah, if you've thought it, there's someone working on it.
Oh yeah.
There's no unique idea.
It's like I know people working on how to take a body scan and turn that into any garment you like. So if you want a custom dress, you want a custom suit, custom skirt, custom shirt, we have to do it. And it doesn't sound that complex. You'd think that we can do it already until you hear about the work that has to be done, but they're going to get there.
Yeah.
And once we've got that sorted, putting that tailor interface you talked about on the top of it, that's going to be a cinch.
Yeah. Well, say since someone going to work long hours. I'm very. I watched some really interesting videos of people who've designed training for GPs to help them practice on how not to. How am I going to say this right? So to train them to be prepared for when patients ask for antibiotics, to train them on how to say no, even when patients are really difficult. So the user need is GPs really struggle when they're under pressure and they end up giving out antibiotics, even when they know that their patients, have a flu, a viral flu. Mm-hmm. And so this content was created with, I think it's by Sylvia Pan, who's at Goldsmiths, teaching the course at Goldsmiths. I think she was the one who was involved in this. And so what they did is they created these kind of characters, and they worked on getting the script realistic, and they would have the GP or the trainee GP arrives in the scene and is at a desk, and these, like a mother and a daughter walk in and sit down and start hassling him, and he can speak, and they appear to be hearing him, and they're responding. And what was so interesting is that even though the doctors being trained knew that the entire thing was a virtual experience, they reacted to it as if it was real, and sometimes they would give up and actually give the prescription.
Wow!
So they would.
It's taking the Turing test to a whole new level.
No, so that's how powerful the experience can be. Just the same as when something's coming at you and you duck down to not get hit by it is, but this is so psychologically really interesting and very effective because it allowed them to practice what they would say, and through the repetition therefore gain strength and ability to be able to do it in the real life. But fascinating that even in the virtual world, they would be bullied into submission by virtual characters.
So even though we're living in this very digital training environment, that fundamental human empathy element is still crucial.
Yeah. So I'm very, very interested in how these kind of things can be used for different kinds of therapies. Helping people with post-traumatic stress syndrome, or a lot can be done in a virtual environment. I don't know if you've seen some of the stuff just helping people with vertigo. Actually, we were talking about vertigo.
No.
So people, So there's been lots of work done where you'd be, your therapist or whatever would be involved and make sure that you won't just it's not like they sell a package called Cure Yourself of Vertigo, but, your therapist would sort of say, okay, I think you should go on this VR thing, and the therapist would be there with you while you did it. But you know how convincing it is. You could be you're standing in your room with your headset on, but you look down and you're at the edge of a building. Mm. And so they've made games whereby you can slowly become used to that feeling of like you're on the edge of the building, and using gamification and things to help people to, they maybe have there's a cat that's crying and you've got to save it.
Oh no!
And it's on the end of a plank that's sticking out on the top of a building. I mean, I can't imagine it. I was fascinated there. I quite like this. Like you could, in a still very frightening, but in a safe space, work through your fears.
You got to worry about the ethics of this thing, because we're in uncharted territory about what you can and can't do. It's becoming more realistic all the time, and we're getting better at doing it all the time. And I think what you could do in VR and say it's okay, it's not real, but be very unethical. The same way that video games keep popping up new ways of blurring the boundaries between what is and isn't acceptable.
Yes. I think it's fascinating. I think the damage that I don't think it matters whether you're in a VR space or outside of VR space. If someone is bullying you, that's bullying. If it's the same as if someone hounds you on a social, on your phone app and says rude things, or if they say rude things to you in a virtual space or attack you in a bullying way, to me, that's all real. it has an impact on your mental health. But I think it's an interesting process. They're going to go on to try to define laws that govern this wild terrain. It's wild, and privacy laws. And I noticed with Facebook owning Oculus that, they are pushing for you to connect to your Facebook account when you go in, which I don't have any particular interest in doing, but they push it on you. Their goal and desire. And I noticed I was playing around with Mozilla Hubs. And have you ever tried going into a Mozilla Hub?
I haven't, no, not yet.
So it only looks, it is, I need to try it with someone else so I can get the full experience of actually what happens. So the idea, it's basically like setting up a meeting space. So instead of us meeting here in this call, we could meet in a little hub space. And it's this little VR environment. You can choose the kind of, it can be a little island, all cute and colorful and kind of cartoon land, right? But it's not all of it's cartoon land. I watched recently that this guy's developed a very cool version for people to have like conferences. So it's not photorealistic, but it's more realistic and to enable people to meet in a virtual conferencing space. Anyway.
I'll tell you what, when I get back into the lab at some point, I'll organize a Mozilla Space for you. It's with the whole lockdown, I'm shut out of all my gear, but let's do that.
Oh no, that's a shame. This is the perfect time to have the gear. Can't you go in and get it? Just go get
probably.
It. Come on. Well, this is the ultimate time to have if I had had a headset all the way through lockdown, I would have been laughing. It's so interesting. Just disappear, get that headset, because if we have another lockdown in winter, you're going to be wanting it.
Oh yeah. Well, I got the advantage of my 18-month son here. So not had a single board day or lockdown.
Yeah, there's not a lot of escape then. Well, there is, but no. So basically, you land in this little hubs. But I didn't have a very great experience doing it on my own. I don't think I know how to do it, and you got to figure it out. And I accidentally used the joystick, which sort of makes you want to vomit as it shunts you forward or to the side. I don't know if you've encountered this navigation.
Yes.
The
frame rate's not quite right for your eyes, so you still feel a bit nauseous.
But your body isn't moving, but your brain thinks you're moving, and so there's this disconnect, and so you're instantly nauseous. But it works. You can just navigate by point and click, and appearing in the spot is fine. But I accidentally started using the little paddle, and that was less pleasant. But anyway, check out Mozilla Hubs. And I think it's very interesting because you can customize. So there's prefabricated ones you can use, but there's also a lot of customization. But the point of me mentioning it was that you can take little photos of yourself, of your virtual character, because you're a little you're a little animation character. You can take photos in that space. So instantly I thought, that'd be cool. I'd love to just get this sent to myself so I can have a record of all these little virtual places, as a record. But the only way you can get it out of there is by tweeting it.
That's clever.
Yeah. And so in the Mozilla Hub, the only way I could detect to get the image out was tweeting. And then in the Oculus things that I tried out, the only way you can get images out of the environment you're in is through Facebook, connecting through Facebook. So I think something's going to change. We need some open source. We need people to create open source platforms that are not so constricting.
And that will come.
That will come.
The community's too large. But it's definitely uncharted territory. So looking at this future where we're meeting in virtual reality, we're shopping in AR, we're having mixed reality all over the place with tactile sensors in our smartphones. What kind of skills do you think the next generation of designers need to really excel in this world?
I don't know. You should ask an 8-year-old. Like they are digital natives. They're playing those games. I don't know. I mean, no one could tell me what skills I needed to, and my job didn't exist when I was at university, I think, having critical thinking skills. If you're a creative and a designer, you're going to design. If you're an engineer, you're going to engineer. I think it doesn't really matter.
Totally. I remember being 8 years old at primary school designing a bird feeder that feeds different kind of birds.
Yeah.
And because I thought, how wonderful it'd be for the garden to be full of different kinds of birds.
Right.
And you hear the stories all the time. So it's been really fascinating talking to you and hearing your ideas of just where you think the world's going. So I want to finish off by asking you, what do you think would make the world a better place?
Well, if people loved each other instead of themselves, I guess. Truly, I wouldn't say technology is going to save the world. It's just a thing. We definitely don't need more apps. No. Yeah, I don't know.
More human love and less technology taking over.
Self-love.
I think that's a really nice kind of place to finish for tonight. So, Marg Laing, thank you very much for your time. It's been a pleasure having you.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure chatting to you.